We're good.
All right. So tonight we're going to talk about the philosophy of healing. Basically talk about chiropractic and how it helps you. But then what we'd encourage is people to send in some questions. So I'll buzz through some slides here, kind of set a foundation about chiropractic, and then any questions that you want to discuss afterwards, then we'll have a little live discussion. All right. So first we're going to talk about adverse drug events. On most of these slides, if you'll notice down here at the bottom, there's references. If you can't see them, I'm going to read them. But this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association. And we're talking about adverse drug events. ADEs, adverse drug events, that means you get a prescription drug, and that prescription drug is for condition A, but then condition B happens, an adverse drug event. It accounts for 140,000 deaths annually. Now, these numbers are according to the 1997 January report, so up to 1996, they were reporting about 140,000 deaths annually. And about 30% of hospitalized patients experience an ADE, an adverse drug event, while they're in the hospital. And then if you look down at the bottom there, it shows that about 28% of all hospital admissions are due to an adverse drug event. All right, a little more of the same there, another reference. United States consumes 60% of the world's drugs. So if you think about all the drugs produced in the whole world, 60% of those drugs are consumed in this country. Now, if you think about the world's population of about, 6.5 billion to 7 billion people,
Something like that.
and the population of the United States is around 400 million, roughly. If we're taking 60% of the world's drugs, that's not good. So if you could say that whoever takes the most drugs wins, then we should be the winningest country on the planet, right? We take the most drugs. So here's what we see, though. I don't know who remembers Ralph Nader in The Public Citizen. I think you have to be my age or older to remember Ralph Nader. But he was a reporter, and in his June of '94, he had this, where he talked about the preventable causes of death in the United States. So this means diseases that could have been preventable, or causes of death, not diseases that could have been preventable. And so at the top of the list is cigarette smoking. It's pretty plain to realize that if Joe Schmo wouldn't have smoked for 40 years, he may not have gotten that lung condition, whether it was cancer or COPD. So that's number one. Alcohol's number two. If you don't drink a fifth of scotch every night, you may be able to avoid having cirrhosis of the liver and die of liver failure. So that's number. Medical malpractice was number three back in '94, accounted for 80,000 deaths a year, or an equivalent of 1 every 7 minutes. Then traffic fatalities was number 4, and firearm deaths was number 5. This study was actually redone recently and showed more of the same. All right, Dr. Eddy is a medical doctor that was a cardiologist, and then he went back to school, decided he didn't want to do cardiology anymore, and so he got his PhD, and I believe it was at Stanford, and he started doing research. One of the research projects that he did was printed in the British Medical Journal in 1991, and what he did was he wanted to know, of all the medical procedures performed, how many of those medical procedures are actually backed by science, and how many of them are just kind of traditional as what we do. And what he found was that 15% of the medical interventions were actually backed by science, which means 85% of the medical interventions are just what they do. I think what I'll do is tell a little story with this. There was a newlywed couple, and husband walks into the kitchen one day, and his new wife is fixing a pot roast dinner, which he was excited about. And so she's cooking this pot roast, and she sets the pot roast out on the counter, and she cuts an inch off this end, and she cuts an inch off this end. And then she puts the pot roast in the pan, and he says, hold on, how come you just cut the tips of the roast off? And she said, well, you're supposed to. It's a pot roast. And he said, but why? And she said, I don't really know. I noticed growing up that my mom always did, so I know you're supposed to. So he says, okay, that's a good enough answer. So he goes in the other room and he calls his mother-in-law and says, hey, when you cook a pot roast, how come you cut the ends of the roast off? And she says, well, it's a pot roast, you're supposed to. And he says, yeah, but how come? And she says, I don't really know. My mom always did, so I know you're supposed to. And he's like, oh, okay. So he calls up Grandma, and he says, Grandma, your daughter and your granddaughter both cut an inch off the pot roast before they put it in the pan, and they said, you're supposed to because you always did. And so what's the story in that? And Grandma laughs, and she says, well, I had a short roasting pan, and I had to make the roast fit. And so, so if the rest of the evening I say something like, that's a pot roast situation, then you'll know that I'm talking about it's tradition, not necessarily scientific, okay? So Albert Einstein, a few of you have heard of him maybe. Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve the problems of today that if we're thinking at the same level we were at when we created those problems. We need to think a little bit outside the box. So that's what I want to talk about for the next few minutes, is thinking outside the box, and maybe not whoever takes the most drugs wins. What happened? There it is. All right, there's my lizard. All right, so we have the oops, wrong button. The lizard, the puppy, and the scientist. So these three pictures represent the three different types of brains on the planet. So the lizard, or the reptilian brain, here's how it functions. Avoid pain, seek pleasure, the goal is survival. And that's basically how they function. The mammalian brain is slightly more advanced because the mammalian brain does this: avoid pain, seek pleasure, the goal is survival with emotion. So the mammal has a limbic system, or a center for emotion. Many of you that have puppies will understand how emotional mammals can be. Some of you are cat lovers, and I don't know why, but they still consider them mammals, even though I don't see too much emotion there. I always like to pick fights with cat lovers. Just a little fun, okay? Now, the human being is the only brain that is capable of abstract consciousness. In other words, a human being will set a goal. And they might go through some pain and bypass or pass up some pleasure for a purpose. So here's the punchline. If you're not purpose-driven, you may be having a subhuman experience on this planet. So let's talk a little bit about purpose. All right? When we talk about philosophy, I don't know if anybody took a philosophy class in college. I did. Was not my favorite class. But it was interesting. To me, if you look at that bottom one, this is philosophy, is when your mom said, why did you do that? What were you thinking when you did that? Philosophy, so the study of every thought or every action we take was preceded with a thought. So if I can correct some of your thinking tonight, I can help you make better decisions, and maybe it will save your life. So let's go with that on philosophy. Now, all the rules of slides say you should never have a slide that's this wordy, but I like it, so we're going. Okay, so read with me. As a human being, you have no choice about the fact that you need a philosophy. Your only choice is whether you define your philosophy by a conscious, rational, disciplined process of thought and scrupulously logical deliberation, or let your subconscious accumulate a junk heap of unwarranted conclusions, false generalizations, undefined contradictions, undigested slogans, unidentified wishes, doubts, and fears, thrown together by chance, but integrated into your subconscious into a kind of mongrel philosophy and fused into a single solid weight, self-doubt, like a ball and chain in the place where your mind's wings should have grown. I love this quote because it really lets you know that it's not a question of whether you have a philosophy or not, it's whether you've defined your philosophy. So you take actions every day, and those actions are based on a belief system, and is that belief system backed by sound philosophy, in other words, science, or is that belief system just a pot roast? Okay, let's go with that. Make sure we don't have pot roast. All right, so the branches of philosophy: metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, politics, and aesthetics. We're just going to talk about the first two, the metaphysics. All right? So the metaphysics is the study of existence or the law of identity. So this is the chiropractic metaphysics. Read with me. Chiropractic metaphysics: the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. Now at this point, usually when it's not Corona time in the country, we have feedback, and so I have patients say, okay, give me an example of the body healing itself. And a lot of times they'll say things like, well, you cut your finger. And so if you cut your finger, it forms a scab, and then that scab heals. And if it's not too bad of a cut, you don't even have a scar. It's amazing how the body can heal itself. Another good example of healing is like the common cold. You always hear, there's no cure for the common cold. By the way, the common cold is a coronavirus. There's no cure for the common cold, but what happens every year is people get colds and they tend to live through them. And my grandpa used to always say, you can go down to the drugstore and get a bunch of stuff and take it, in about a week you'll feel better, or you can do absolutely nothing at all, and in about a week you'll feel better. So the common cold, the body heals itself. And so that's another good example of healing. Now, the body regulating itself. Let's talk about what that means. So, right now, I'm breathing. My heart is beating. I ate some almonds right before I started talking, so I'm digesting those things. All those things are happening, and I don't have to think about them at all. That's my autonomic nervous system. It works automatically, get it? So the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. And that is the first sentence, okay? Remember that. Then the second sentence is the nervous system is the master system. So this is a point where we usually, when we have people sitting in here eating tacos, we name all the systems of the body. So I'm going to use Devin and Darla here. Devin, what's your favorite system?
Hands down the reproductive
system, all-time favorite. I get that. Darla, what's your favorite system?
Endocrine system, but right now I'm getting hot flashes, so
that's your endocrine system.
Maybe it's not my favorite anymore.
So the endocrine system is no longer your favorite because you're menopausing. So we have the reproductive system, we have the endocrine system. We talked about me breathing, that's the respiratory system. My heart is beating, that's the cardiovascular system, including lymphatic system. We have digestive system, like the almonds that are going through me right now, and it made me cough, and I don't have corona, just a cough from eating too many almonds. What's our other systems? Integumentary system, your skin. Musculoskeletal system, your muscles.
Cardiovascular, did you already say that?
I already said cardiovascular, you can't say that. Immune system, that's the one that beat the corona. The immune system, very important system. So all these systems, guess which one's in charge? That's correct. The nervous system. So the nervous system controls all the systems, coordinates their function, especially, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, the immune system. Very, very important part of the immune system is the nervous system role that it plays. All right, now the epistemology, the supremacy of reason. So, think about it. If the first two sentences, the body heals and regulates itself, and the nervous system is the master system. So, if the nervous system is in charge of the body's healing and regulating, would it be good or would it be bad if you interfered with the nervous system? Keep in mind it's in charge of the healing and regulating. So it would affect the healing and regulating in a negative way. So,
Bad.
Bad. So think about this sentence. If there's interference to the nervous system, then there is interference to the body's ability to heal and regulate. So chiropractic started back in 1895 with a man named Daniel David Palmer, and he was a magnetic healer. In other words, he was studying the effects of magnetic fields on the body, and he literally was wanting to know, how does it affect the nervous system? He had a janitor in his building where he was at that told him that he had lost his hearing after he fell down a flight of stairs. Always remember when you're mopping by the stairs to not back down the stairs. Well, he went deaf after he fell down the stairs, and so D.D. Palmer was thinking, wow, what if there's something wrong with his spine because of the fall and that's affecting his hearing? And the way he put it is he palpated this guy's spine and he said, I felt a bone that seemed out of place and I racked it back into place and his hearing came back. So initially he thought, wow, I've just discovered the treatment for deafness. And of course later he figured out that that wasn't the case. But that began the chiropractic philosophy that understands if there's interference to the nervous system, then that interferes with the body's ability to heal and regulate. So, chiropractors have taught, practiced, and believed this philosophy. The body heals and regulates itself. The nervous system's the master system. If you interfere with the nervous system, you interfere with the body's ability to heal and regulate. We've taught this for 125 years. What's interesting is now that technology has caught up, and in the last 20 years, what they've learned about the immune system is completely in sync with what D.D. Palmer postulated 100 years ago. And that's pretty amazing. All right? We're not going to talk about ethics. We don't like politics. Aesthetics is the art of chiropractic. So there's about 1,000 different ways to practice chiropractic, a lot of different techniques. As long as they remove nerve interference, people get better because their nervous system is functioning better. All right? So the most serious mistakes are not being made as a result of the wrong answers. The truly dangerous thing is asking the wrong questions. So what kind of questions should we be answering? How do your organ systems know how to do what they do? What would the messages from my brain get to the right destination if the pressure was on the nerve? Could problems in my spine affect how my organ systems function? A lot of people think about back pain and sciatica, pain down the leg, or numbness and tingling in the fingers, and that's what chiropractic is. But if the nervous system controls all the systems of the body, then obviously it's going to make a difference when you have a good functioning nervous system for all these systems. Here's a little bit better of a diagram that shows how complex it really is. And keep in mind, with all the systems, it is very complex. And a lot of times we don't think about how complex it is and think that there's simple problems or simple drugs that can fix complex problems. All right, the term subluxation is used by chiropractors. The word sub means slight and lux means light. So slightly less light is one term. A luxation is also if your shoulder's completely dislocated, that's called a luxation. If it's slightly out of place, that's called a subluxation. So if your spinal bones are slightly out of place, then that's going to interfere with the nervous system because the nerves pass through the bones of the spine, and that affects the function. So chiropractors call subluxation of a malpositioning of the vertebrae of the spine, and we correct subluxations with chiropractic adjustments. All right? So you got a subluxation that leads to interference with the communication network, and then you got an imbalance in body chemistry that lowers performance. So you get an adjustment from a chiropractor that restores the communication and rebalances the body chemistry and restores performance. So you have good performance and good body chemistry, and the communication network is intact. And then the bones of the spine protect that communication network, and oops, what happens if you get a subluxation? Well, that interferes with the communication network and imbalances body chemistry. Here's my point. Should you get adjusted once a year? Should you get adjusted once a month? I get adjusted once a week because I want my nervous system finely tuned If there's any interference, I want it to be taken care of right away. And I must say that I was at a seminar a couple months ago. Good water. I was at a seminar a couple months ago, and the speaker said, okay, you're all chiropractors, and do you take care of your family, your loved ones? And we all said, yes, we take care of our family, our loved ones. And he said, and you guys take care of your spines? And we all said, yes, we take care of our spines. And he said, just by a show of hands, how many of you make sure you get adjusted once a week? And most of us all raised our hands that we know the value of chiropractic and we get adjusted once a week. And he says, how many of you make sure your family gets adjusted once a week? And we all raised our hands. And he says, do you make sure that your staff gets adjusted once a week? And we all said yes. And he says, now, what do you recommend to your patients on a wellness plan or maintenance care? What do you recommend? And you know what I realized is a lot of times I'll tell people you need to at least be getting adjusted once a month or you're not taking care of your spine. And so I had to re-examine that. And so now I tell my patients, when they say I want to come in once a month, I tell them at least once a month or you're not taking care of your spine. But if I really loved you, I would tell you, you should get adjusted once a week, get your spine checked, make sure you don't have subluxations so that all your systems will function and coordinate properly.
A comment from
We
the
have
audience.
a comment from the audience.
Leslie wants everyone to know my neck and spine goes out easy when I lift stuff. I have issues with my neck and it affects my nervous system. It's important for me to get adjusted once a week or else I get headaches and pain on my neck.
No testimonial from Leslie, our patient.
Stress too.
Stress. Oh my gosh. Is there any stress right now going on in this country? Not at all. All right. Health. Here's from Dorland's Medical Dictionary. This is says a state of optimum physical, mental, and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. You notice it didn't say anything about symptoms in there? But aren't we all trained to just think symptom relief? And that's health. Kind of dangerous. All right? Subluxations. So this guy right here, Dr. Ronald Perrow, he's a PhD. He's out of New York. And he's been doing research on the immune system for years and years. And one of the projects he did, he was drawing blood. He was looking for markers in the blood for the immune system, and just doing a study on the strength of immune system using these different markers in the blood. And he would come across people that they were way off the chart, like superhuman immune system. And so he would interview these people to find out, okay, what are you doing that your immune system's up here and most everybody else's is down here? And of course, I wouldn't be sharing this story unless this was the punchline. They all had lifetime family wellness care from a chiropractor since they were born. When your nervous system is free of interference, your immune system functions at a higher level. Now, recently, we've been challenged on that. So there is a group of chiropractors that also have PhDs, piled high and deep, but they are against this notion. They don't want chiropractors to communicate that the immune system is affected by getting adjustments. And so they challenged this. And even on our Facebook, we were telling everybody, hey, during this corona scare, everybody get your adjustments because it does improve immune function. And they challenged us, and they actually, do you call it marked or tagged or whatever? They had a post under our post saying that this is not true. A comment. And so I contacted some other chiropractors. I'm saying, have you had this craziness? What is this? And so I got educated on it real quick, and I read quite a bit. It's called the World Federation of Chiropractic, and there's these guys on the board that are anti-chiropractic, basically. They think that chiropractors should just be relegated to improving back pain technicians, so to speak. And so the International Chiropractic Association took them to task, because what they said in their paper, the Federation, what's it called? World Chiropractic Federation. they said there's no research that shows that the immune system is enhanced by getting adjustments. And so the International Chiropractic Association said, we can name right off the bat 14 peer-reviewed, double-blind studies proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that chiropractic improves immune function. They've measured it, it's scientific, it's peer-reviewed, that's the gold standard in the medical profession, and it does improve immune function. And then they had a section in their write-up that said, anecdotal. I don't know if you know what anecdotal means. It just means people tell a story. It says, oh, well, my aunt was real healthy because she went to the chiropractor. Well, that's not scientific, it's anecdotal. I've been practicing chiropractic for 28 years, and I get adjusted every week. I have never missed a single day adjusting patients. If I'm not here, I'm sitting on a beach somewhere, I'm not sick. Now that's anecdotal. But you know what? Anecdotal is still good. It's like, here's an anecdotal. The 1918 flu epidemic, Spanish flu, millions of people died. Worldwide, globally, 1 out of every 10 people that got this Spanish flu died. In the United States, it was actually about 1 out of 15. But the stat keepers realized, the health departments, that if those people that got the flu, if they were getting adjustments from chiropractors or osteopaths, it was about 1 out of 700, 1 out of 800 that died. So long before chiropractors were relegated to back pain specialists, we were known as the best treatment out there for viruses. And then with the pneumonia cases, we had great success as well. All we were doing is adjusting the spine, improving the function of the immune system.
So you adjust sick people?
So, Darla says, do you adjust sick people? So for 28 years, I've been in practice. It'll be 29 in September. Is that right? 28.
I was thinking
1992, it'll be 28. So it'll be 28 years in September. So that means I've practiced through 27 cold and flu seasons. I've trained my front desk CA, chiropractic assistant, that if somebody calls and says, I'm going to cancel my appointment because I have the flu and I don't want to get you guys sick, they're trained to rip them a new one and say, you get down here, you need an adjustment more now than ever, and come down and get an adjustment. And those people always do better because we crank up the immune system. All right? Very good question, though. All right, flexor dominant posture. I know we had a question from somebody about this.
Text neck.
Text neck. All right, so we have a whole generation of people now, 2 generations, that do this constantly. All right, they're like this. How's that posture looking right there? That's really not good. It's causing a lot of problems. So if your nervous system is supposed to be functioning really well for all your other systems, and you're like this constantly, and now you see people all the time that have this posture that are young, because we've seen lots of people in their 90s that have this posture, and this is called flexor dominant posture. Okay? Flexor dominant posture. The flexor dominant posture is associated with a lot of health problems. Okay? Early mortality. So these people live longer than these people. 64% increase in heart attacks, especially with height loss. In other words, compression fractures affects the nervous system right in the heart and lung area. Not good. Depression. Remember earlier we talked about the limbic system, that the lizard, the mammalian brain doesn't have a limbic system. The mammalian brain does, except for cats. But that was just me picking a fight. But the limbic system, they've found in the last 20, 30 years, is that there's more limbic tissue in your spine than there is in your brain. And so a lot of people say, so why do you go to chiropractor? You know what, I just feel better when I get my spine adjusted regularly, because it's affecting that limbic system. So decreased depression. Very good. Restricted lung capacity. Obviously, this guy with a good posture is going to breathe better than this guy. And then dementia, decline in brain function. Everybody, if we went into a classroom full of very smart college students and we said, how many senses do you have? Most of them would say 5: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. But the truth actually is there's 6, because the 6th one is called proprioception. So hopefully you can you see my hand here?
I believe so.
All right, so here's my finger. I can't see it, I can't smell it, I can't taste it, I'm not touching it, I can't hear it. But guess what? My brain knows exactly where my finger is at all times and what it's doing. That's called proprioception. So this one right here, increased dementia, this needs to be fixed. Decrease in dementia and decline in brain function. Oh, that's not right. I'm sorry. Increased dementia and decline in brain function is associated with poor posture. Okay, I got it right now. So the main thing is because of proprioception. You've heard before of biofeedback. Your brain and your body communicating. By the way, it's a two-way communication, and for every 1 bit of information coming up, there's 10 going down. Okay? So it's the other way around. 10 bits of information going up, 1 going down. So there's a lot of biofeedback going on. Proprioception is huge in that. So you take Parkinson's patients and you exercise them, you get them moving. The physical therapists have done a lot of good for Parkinson's patients, getting them moving. That increased proprioception is huge for this. So,
Headaches.
last slide. We got a question about headaches?
Kids getting headaches, and then why would you get a headache if you just get adjusted once every few months?
Okay. All right. Keep that in mind. Let's finish this slide and then we'll get a couple questions. So, health and wellness comes from purity and sufficiency. So purity in your environment, purity in your diet, sufficiency in your diet and in movement, okay? Sufficiency of movement, especially in the spine. All these good foods. Oops. And then sickness and disease comes from toxicities and deficiencies. Okay, we have some nice little pictures here. So, here's what I really want you to think about from this slide. And of course, this is a simplification, but it's basically true. If you have a sickness or a disease, you need to find out what toxicities and deficiencies caused the disease. If you have one of these sickness and diseases caused by toxicities and deficiencies, would the answer be to add more toxicities to get well? Absolutely not. It makes no sense. But a lot of times we get a sickness and disease and we go to a doctor and he prescribes medications, toxicities. It toxifies our body more. If we can figure out the toxicities and deficiencies and detoxify those and replace with purity and sufficiency, our body heals and regulates itself, doesn't it? And so it's real simple. This is why chiropractors have been around for 125 years, and we've had such success in helping people be healthy, because we remove nerve interference, otherwise known as subluxations, and then the body can heal and regulate itself the way we're supposed to. We're getting a lot better at helping people understand what to eat and what not to eat, what to drink and what not to drink, and this makes a huge difference. Water, water, water. Your body likes water. The rule of the desert. If you weigh about 200 pounds, like I do, you should drink 100 ounces of water a day minimum. Now, if you're one of these guys that works outside, then you need to drink 200 ounces of water minimum a day. If you have an office job and you're not sweating all day long, then drink half your weight in ounces. Okay? That's the law of the desert for hydration. All right. So now, let's answer some questions. So I have a patient that comes in a couple times a year. And now they don't come in at all because they say, well, when I get adjusted, I get a headache. Okay, so if you have long-standing subluxations and you're only getting adjusted once or twice a year, and we remove those subluxations, it's going to make sense that you might get a little bit of a headache afterwards because it needs more than once a year. A lot of times I'll use the example, have you ever gone to the gym and worked out when you haven't been to the gym in months? Don't you get sore? Yes. Well, does that mean that working out, exercising is bad for you? No. So if we're judging everything by symptoms, is that a winning game? A lot of times it's not. So regular adjustments. When we first start working on somebody, I'll flat tell them you may get worse before you get better, because we might stir things up a little bit as we start to correct the subluxations. And so also, if you are getting headaches after adjustments, there's a lot of different ways we can adjust. And so we just need to work together, good communication and be good teamwork. All right? Very good. Any other questions?
Miriam wants to know how do you spell proprioception?
Proprioception.
What is that word? And she wanted to understand that more.
Okay. So proprioception, P-R-O-P-R-I-O, ception, C-E-P-T-I-O-N. That's my best guess, proprioception. That's biofeedback. So if you look that up, every joint in your body, every muscle of your body has receptors called mechanoreceptors or proprioceptors. And they're constantly talking to the brain. So like when I was doing this example of my fingers right here, and it knows what it's doing, every movement I make sends a message to the brain, so the brain knows exactly what's going on. But we also have receptors in our gut, we have in our heart, we have in our lungs, letting the brain know at all times what's going on. A lot of times I've had this is the weirdest thing I heard today. So 28 years of practice and I heard something new today. A patient had gotten his first adjustment last week and he said, I got to ask you a question. He said, I've never been able to remember my dreams, but after your adjustment last week, I'm remembering all my dreams. And his roommates were saying, yeah, could you shut him up every day? He gets up and he tells us about his dream. But he's so excited, and it really all we're talking about is good biofeedback, good communication with the nervous system. I've never heard that one before. That was interesting. But the opposite of proprioception is nociception. Nociception is bad input, and so the guy with this poor posture has a lot of nociception, and that causes lots of problems in the body. That's why exercise is so important. Movement, exercise, it's like vitamins for your brain. Okay? Very, very important. Any other questions?
Karen shared, I found if I don't get adjusted regularly, the muscles start holding my neck and back incorrectly for so long. I do get sore after an adjustment, I think she's saying, but overall, I'm so much better.
Yep, right. And that's basically any joint that's not moving properly, it gets stuck, basically gets inflammation. The end phase of all inflammation is degeneration. So when I take x-rays of people's spines that they have premature degeneration, I always start asking questions like, how many car accidents have you been in? Have you ever been to a chiropractor? When was your last adjustment? What other traumas have you had? Because it's not normal to be 30, 40 years old and already have phase 2 degeneration in your spine. There's a reason for that. And so when you get adjusted every week, you make sure those joints are all moving normally. You get great biofeedback and good healthy joints.
Martha said AZ Life Chiropractic is the best.
AZ Live Cairo. Thank you, Martha. All right, thank you, everybody. We love you. We're here for you. Get your adjustments. Keep your immune system up. By the way, vitamin A is very good for your cells' membranes. The virus has a very hard time getting in when you're taking vitamin A. Makes your cell membrane strong. Vitamin C, very good. Now they're treating a lot of corona cases with intravenous vitamin C because they've learned how valuable that is. Very good for your immune system. And then vitamin D3 literally boosts immune function. Very important. Get out in the sun. You may be being told to stay home, but that doesn't mean you can't be out on the front porch and get some sun, get some exercise, move around. Sun is very good. Zinc. Viruses don't like zinc. Zinc is good for viruses. And iodine, very good for viruses. And we've posted on our, if you do get the virus, there's a 4-day way to kick it. And you can go on Dr. David Brownstein's website, MD, David Brownstein, MD. He's written a book on iodine, but he has how to beat the virus in 4 days. And the dosages to take, and we posted that as well. Any other things? I think we're way past time. Love you all. Bye now.